Cool.
All right, I think we should just get kicked off. So I'm going to cancel the camera and my mic and hand over to George. This is Helping the Live Community Lab, and I'll let you guys crack on.
Cool. All right, so I'll keep to the pretty normal format of normal panel and just crack on with an introductions. Took me a while to be able to say helping our community, live community live was a little bit of a mouthful. But yeah, effectively, I think we're going to be looking at, I guess, some of the effects of the last year on live community and everyone involved in it, and then also a little bit on the outlook for the next 12 months or so. So yeah, maybe we can go around. I'm not sure if everyone's in the same order as they are on my screen, but maybe we'll start with Sybil on introduction just to who you work for, and then I was thinking maybe we could kick off with the last live event that you did go to before things got real in February.
My name's Sybil Bell. I'm founder of Independent Venue Week, which is run in the UK by Can You Kick It, which is our community interest company. The last live gig I went to before lockdown was Kate Tempest at the Roundhouse in London for the BBC Six Music Festival, and it was amazing.
Nice. That probably links quite nicely onto Rachel then.
Oh, hello. Hang on, I've lost you. 1 second. I'll move on to someone else. My screen's gone funny.
All right, Trevor.
Okay, yeah, I'm Trevor Thompson. I run a company based in Scotland and Glasgow. We specialise in live streaming. We do a lot of music stuff, and we're looking at monetisation for live streaming. We do it in the corporate sector, we do it in the music sector, and we've got a live streaming studio built in Glasgow. I think the last big gig I was at, I've been to loads of little gigs going Glasgow, we're out all the time looking at gigs. I think my favourite last one was in a city. It was in the Bard in Glasgow. That was pretty wicked.
Nice. And did you set yourselves up? Did you launch as a response to what's been going on before?
Nah, George, we've been live streaming for about 20 years. So I was down in London. I used to live in Brighton, and I got into the internet years and years ago. Back in the day, 1996, I think I got my first modem from some chaps in Brighton. We're pretty ahead of the game. And then worked up in London for Castle Records, done a lot of stuff for Iron Maiden, and basically went back to uni and went back to Ealing and started streaming, putting stuff on the internet then. So we've been doing it, and then live streaming with satellites and stuff like that. But in the last 7 years, YouTube and Facebook allowing people to live stream has just opened the doors. But now we've been doing it for too long, probably. But obviously, with this stuff kicking in now, everybody's really interested in it.
That's interesting. I just assumed every live streaming company started on like February the 11th or whatever.
No, I know. I started way back, so, yeah.
That's cool. Great. Rachel, are you with us?
Yes, sorry. I'm back. I had too many things open on the screen. Story of my life. I am currently heading up the BBC Music department, looking after TV commissioning mainly. So things that come under me are Mercury Prize, Reading and Leeds Festival, Glastonbury, the Live Lounge show. So lots of live music on telly. We've got the MOBO Awards coming soon. My team also do bits of events and some podcasting and other things, so a little bit of everything. Oh, what's the other question? What was the last gig?
Last gig you went to?
Oh yeah, I went to see Big Thief play the Albert Hall in Manchester, and I was actually saying to Sybil before, I was whinging about that gig because it was a Sunday night and I didn't want to get out of my pajamas and go to the gig. I'm really glad I did. It was wonderful, and I'll remember that gig forever.
I imagine it was your 8th gig that week or something.
Just Sunday gigs are a bit I'm tired, but yeah, dragged myself there. Thankfully.
Cool. And John?
Hi, I'm John Drake. I produce music festivals. So day to day, I've got a company called Engine No.4, and I produce things like Park Life, Kendall Calling, Blue Dot. I'm also director of Broadwick venues. So we've got a series of venues in London and one in Manchester. So we've got Printworks, Drum Sheds, Magazine, and Exhibition all in London, and Depot in Manchester. Also developed other concepts as well, and this year we opened Escape from Freight Island in Manchester, So that was a new concept that we opened. And the last show I did, we were halfway through a series of shows at Depot in Manchester, a series of club shows with Warehouse Project, which were curtailed by lockdown number 1.
I was going to say nice, but that's not very nice. Probably was a little bit of a tough gig then, I imagine.
Well, that just sort of began the whole period of cancellations. So my year started by planning and booking, opening some shows, and then we went through a whole painful period of either postponements or cancellations, which took much longer than most people can think.
Yeah. Half the year. Cool. So just to finish off the intros, I'm George from TicketTailor. We're an independent ticketing platform based in London, but work with events all around the world. So we do everything from kind of music festivals and gigs, and working with venues, right the way through to kind of small charity fundraisers and kind of everything in between. My last event I went to was Little Sims Earth in Hackney. Which was also brilliant, but I didn't know it was going to be my last gig, unfortunately. I probably would have made a bigger thing of it instead. But yeah, so I thought we should probably start by just doing a quick, even though I imagine most people on the call are kind of aware of how this year's played out. But John, you started touching on it there, but you're probably closest to, I guess, the impact of what it's been, the impact having live music this year. Do you just want to kind of give a little bit of a sense of how this year played out for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, our first festival of the season is much earlier than most, because we produced Snowbombing, which takes place in Austria, which is early April. So clearly the impact of the virus was being felt in Italy, and as well as Austria and all border issues over there. Really before it became a significant issue in the UK. So Snowbombing was our first show to cancel in March, and then very quickly followed the run of shows I spoke about, the Warehouse Project at Depot, and then everyone was looking at the festival season and looking at how that would play out with a very unclear idea of what would be achievable and when. And one of the challenges that we had was the fact that the UK government was not being very clear about events, where governments made a very clear policy about mass gatherings would not be taking place and gave certain dates. Unfortunately, we didn't have that benefit. So the cancellation process, or postponement in some cases, was quite painful. Certainly with insurers or with artists and contracts and that type of thing, to make sure as fast as a force majeure event and FM would kick in. In some instances we have local authorities who make that call for us. So Manchester City Council, Park Life was quite early in the season, that they stepped in and said that this event would not be taking place. But that wasn't the same everywhere. Certainly smaller local authorities certainly didn't want to put themselves in a position where there could be litigation. So and that cancellation and postponement process took a considerable length of time. Imagine festivals take an awful long time to plan, and they take an awful long time to unpick when you end up in a cancellation situation.
And so I guess part of the challenge, and it sounds like, was the fact you were kind of half keeping lots of things going, thinking, is it going to happen? And then so you couldn't make an early call about your events.
No, I mean, clearly every event's different in terms of how you deal with it. With Park Life, which is a substantial event, 80,000 customers, always got a very traditional date at the beginning of June.
Yeah,
we made a decision that was clearly not going to take place this year, and that was essentially cancelled. Then on to the festivals, talking to the promoters, there was an ongoing situation probably through most of April, where can we postpone it into September? And you saw a lot of festivals move dates later into the summer in the hope that we'd be over the virus. Little did we know then. And so, you know, that was an ongoing conversation again. And you can understand why there wasn't a great deal of support or advice forthcoming.
Yeah. And did you manage to squeeze, obviously the larger festivals didn't happen, but did you manage to squeeze anything in between the kind of summer when things eased up a little bit, or not really?
Yeah, we delivered a series of shows, socially distant shows with SSD, who are Newcastle-based promoters. So we delivered a thing called the Virgin Money Unity Arena. So we did about 36 dates over 6 weeks. A variety of content from live music, Two-Door Cinema Club and Libertines, to Bongos Bingo, sounds of the musicals, some kids activity. But that was a socially distanced show.
Yeah.
Which had an awful lot of interest, and because it was a large outdoor show, but only large in terms of the cost and the scale of it, not large in terms of the audience size.
Yeah.
We live in an arena which normally you'd be putting 10 to 15,000 people in, but we were fitting 2,500 people in it. And unfortunately, the metrics on that don't stack up. And it was only really down to the ballsy nature of SSD and a sponsor, Virgin Money, that really got off the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And then thanks for that, John. Sybil, you're probably closer to kind of some small venues, I guess. Like, what's your sense of how the last, how long has it been? 10 months, 8 months, 9 months, I don't know, has been for them? What's a snapshot of the landscape for venues?
Excuse me. It's been absolutely shocking for everybody, and I think I think the biggest challenge that we face with this pandemic is that we don't know when the end is. That's been the biggest tough thing. So a lot of people who had shows booked in for the spring, then rescheduled them for the autumn. They've been rescheduled for next spring. They're already being rescheduled for next autumn. But from a venue point of view, it's just, what's particularly hard for the venues is they operate on such tight margins at the best of times. So very few have any reserves. Some do, but very, very few have any reserves. And it is that constant flow of footfall through the door that allows them to survive. And actually what's happened is that obviously the footfall has dropped away, but the bills are still there. And it's been really challenging for them in terms of their staff as well. I think one thing that COVID has definitely highlighted is just how the creative industry is propped up by freelancers and contractors. And everybody fell through the cracks in that respect. And that has been disastrous for the industry, because a lot of people are now leaving and won't come back because they cannot face this kind of uncertainty. So from a venue point of view, those that were able to furlough staff have done so, but a lot of staff have not been in that position. And it's just been incredibly tough to see how difficult it's been to get the people who have been responsible finally for, making sure the money is there, how long it took and how many conversations it took with different people for them to recognize that we need to preserve the arts and culture. And I know you're asking me about venues, but I think it's so important to look at the whole ecosystem. This isn't just about the buildings. For independent venue, we've always championed the bigger ecosystem, because without the grassroots live community will only thrive if everybody survives. That is a fact. So we're not just talking about the venues or the promoters or the staff. We're talking about the kit companies that provide all the gear. We're talking about the merch companies, the sales companies, the sound engineer, the lighting engineer. We're talking about that whole ecosystem, and it's so important. And I think that conversation is only now starting to materialize in any way, really, because even for and obviously John will testify to this, nobody starts working on a major festival and running a major festival. They work their way up. And for us, we've always seen venues as cultural hubs in their local community. We've got venues in tiny little villages right through to major city centres. And for so many people in this country who want to work in music who don't have parents that allows them to work, you know, at an unpaid internship, that don't know anybody in the industry, don't know how to get a foot in the door. The easiest foot in the door into the music industry is to walk through the door of a venue, shake hands with the promoter when you're allowed, go and meet the promoter, go and meet the stage manager, go and speak to people in the venue, make yourself indispensable, offer to help out. And I think that's what we're recognizing now. I hope more. And I think for some of our venues that we work with, they have shut their doors. They will not reopen until they can reopen fully at 100% capacity. And I totally get that. That's as it should be for them.
So that's
for others,
when they can break even, basically, and they know.
Yeah, because they just simply can't. You know, the margins are so tight on everything. And others have been doing socially distanced shows. But if you look again at the whole ecosystem, a lot of the agents have had to let staff go, and they've taken their rosters with them. So there's what's happening, what we've seen over the summer is a lot of small businesses now starting up and people collaborating. But what has also come out of that is not the need for more transparency, but the fact that there is more transparency, because I've been on calls with people from Featured Artists Coalition, Music Managers Forum, from venues, with promoters, with artists, and people have been looking to the future about how they're going to, how things are going to return. And actually, this is a chance. It's almost like a Control-Alt-Delete on the world, isn't it? What's happened? Let's reset and look at how we do everything. And I think there is a real willingness for more transparency in the way that shows and tours are booked, and a bit more openness. And I think of all the things that have been so difficult this year, there's been some really engaging conversations with different people to look at how we treat what's happened and learn from it and make the future feel a little bit more robust and a bit more sustainable for everybody. Because there are a lot of promoters, some of them in-house, but also some external promoters that lost money over COVID because they put deposits down on shows that couldn't then go ahead. So not only were they not making any money, they were losing money. And I think that's been a really big eye-opener for a lot of people. I think that the venue community, I think it was 80 or 90% of the venue community applied for the Cultural Relief Fund. And of those, 80 or 90% got the money. And that's been a huge...
Yeah, on that, do you think that is basically going to correlate to how many venues survive? Like, is it if you didn't get that money, there's no way that you're going to be able to survive?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. 100%. That was a deal breaker for them. And I think it was a really tough time. Everybody had to sit and wait for those results to come in. And it was a question of, right, okay, well, can we continue, or is it shutting our doors permanently? And that's an incredibly stressful process to go through. And we know that because as independent venue, we go through it every year. We have no backers, we have no funding. We have to apply for our funding every year. So we have full sympathy for venues, and it has enabled venues to survive. Now, what it means is that money takes them through to the end of March. We're all allowed to carry 8 weeks over into reserves. So that will see us through to end of May. We all hope and think by then that the doors will be able to be reopened. Under what circumstances, we don't quite yet know, and nobody does. But it has given people much needed breathing space. And that's been instrumental in their survival, absolutely.
So it's kind of like two things, isn't there? There's like the business level, like the venue level, basically, like can they hibernate and reappear in March, April, May, whenever it is. And then there's the talent and the kind of wider ecosystem, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the two things are inextricably linked, which is why we do say, you know, the live community will only thrive if everybody survives. And it's so important. And I think that's one of the things that we've been doing a lot of this summer, is looking at what activity we can do when the venues reopen that is beyond just live music. I don't want to talk about that now because we're just focusing on this bit, but it's been a really tough time for the venues. But I do feel it's important to, when we talk about the venues, to talk about everybody that's involved, that walks through the door, whether they're a gig goer or they're on stage or they're behind the scenes. That for me and for us is the world of the venues.
Yeah, great, thanks for that. So Trevor was saying about most venues hibernating, probably. I guess you've been working with a few that have been trying to make something of the last 9 or 10 months. It'd be great to kind of hear about, probably played out very different for you, for a lot of people in the industry. What's it look like, and who mainly are you working with? Is it directly with artists? Is it venues, promoters? What's the landscape look like?
Yeah, it was pretty similar stuff what everybody's saying. I mean, the first 3 months was just total chaos, wasn't it? I mean, just everything ended. We ended all our stuff for 3 to 4 months, really, to find out where we were going, what we're doing. What we tried to do, I mean, I was back, I'm in my studio today, we're fully open, but I went back to my house. I was in my garage, working from my garage. I had already had a relationship with a couple of artists, like we say, some poets, and a lot of musicians. And they reached out to us, and we kind of reached out to them kind of instantly. Their venues were locked down, like the Hairdressers in Glasgow, the Bad, the Glad Cafe, all of these for small independent artists to perform. What's really important, like you guys are saying to them, had no place to perform. So we tried to move really quickly and put some stuff online for people. So we were recording them in a studio, we were recording people remotely, we were doing some educational stuff for people, like just showing how to jack the audio jacks into the iPhones, into the iPads, talking about different kind of software that they could use to live stream online. But a lot of this stuff's been there already, but people were just anxious to get stuff out. So we produced a couple of virtual shows, one for poets, it's called Sonnet Youth in Glasgow, which they put on 6 different poets every fortnight, and they put a show out. And so we've done that. We've been working with people we worked for before, like 23rd Precincts, which Resonate. So we put 2 shows on of DJ streaming live through different platforms. We put a couple of bands, independent bands through as well. We worked with the BMX band that's done a record from them in Glasgow. I know Douglas really well, Douglas from the Bandits. We've done stuff with them. So at the beginning, it was really help the artists, because with all the funding, there was no funding for them at the beginning. Venues had some funding coming in and could do something. I had artists who were saying, I've got no income. And I was like, wow. And that gave me a lot of anxiety. We still had some corporate edits to do. So we had editing that we could do for a couple of months. So we just tuned into artists, started supporting a couple of venues, started speaking to the Glad Cafe, started speaking to Billy from 23rd Precinct and doing stuff for the Bad. I mean, to do Resonate today, I think we've done a lot of the music videos and cut a lot of them and recorded a lot of stuff, the stuff that was in St. Luke's and stuff like that. So we're supporting people put their content online, and it was a bit desperate in the beginning, but after about 3 or 4 months, people started to get their heads around it. But the interesting thing, George, what I was saying to people was, don't rush in and just put stuff out if it's not good enough, because you can damage yourself, you know? So sit back.
Not easy to do, is it?
No, I mean, people are sitting there and you hear artists saying, I don't know what to do in my life, I can't perform. And that's when you realize, it really hits in that's their job, you know?
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Instagram streams where I'm having to sort of go horizontal and
totally different kind of angles and stuff. So, but I mean, it's been an interesting evolution. A lot of tags that I'm looking on, a lot of the streaming community online globally are saying that they're calling it the streaming gold rush. So it's like America's planting a flag in, everybody's trying to get new land.
Yeah.
You know?
And from what you've seen, like, what's the percentage or kind of breakdown of like people that are doing stuff to like keep engaged with their audience, keep a connection, versus people that have actually found business models that have sustained them, if not, you know, be a positive channel like going forward?
Yeah, well, I think percentage wise, I would say, you know, I'd say it's about 70-80% of people are just putting content out. Right? Yeah. It's not getting monetized. It's not giving them any income, but it's giving them something to do. Maybe like we're all busy. Everybody's going, oh, I'm so busy putting content out, but I don't know if it was getting much traction for people. I think that what happened was people who partnered up with people to put events on, like John was talking about earlier on in Manchester, coming up with a venue, coming up with artists and joining together and putting a really decent package, an online package together. And giving people more than one artist to watch, maybe a couple of artists, a couple of interviews, you know, going that way. And I've seen maybe that 20%, I've seen a couple of people do things in the Barrowlands. I've seen different kind of people doing stuff in Manchester, down in London. Tim Burgess is doing some good stuff online. So the collaborations like that are working. Monetization, we've done a couple of gigs, but monetized and worked really well for medium to signed artists. And a couple of bands have actually said after doing it, wow, we've made more money at this live stream than we do playing at a small indie venue. What was really interesting, and what I didn't know, even from all that stuff, is some bands are still paying to play at venues, would just knock my socks off. So I'm learning a bit more about what's happening from the transition.
I guess with streaming, you kind of take the power back a little bit as an artist.
As an independent, it's kind of interesting. We've had the whole kind of tracks going online, since Apple and all of that, making the platforms for monetizations of actually tracks and downloads. But it's really interesting about actual live performance of a gig, and how maybe in the future artists can own the rights to their own performances and reuse their content, monetize their content. It's a really interesting time, for that. And that's kind of what we're looking at for artists as well. But obviously for venues and all of that as well. I think in the future, large venues will be able to stream and have people there, and there'll be some kind of hybrid model.
Yeah. Seen a lot of that in the ticketing world.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah.
Rachel, what's your view of kind of, I guess, the artists, and like how's that affected that ecosystem, and like how have kind of people who have really done well over the last 10 months, is it because they've like noticed something that's happening in the industry and like managed to do it really well, or has it just been like other years where some people, happen to get momentum?
Oh, I mean, if you're tech savvy, you've managed to have a fairly good year. But I think everyone's struggling on all levels, really. I think we at the BBC are in the business of bringing music to license fee payers, to our audience, and a lot of that is live music. And when that live music isn't happening, so that might be a partnership with Glastonbury or any other event, or various sessions in and outside of the BBC, when they're not happening, that's very difficult to do. We're lucky to have a very amazing archive, and with Glastonbury, for example, when we knew that couldn't go ahead, we had to be creative and open up that archive, and we made 100 sets available on iPlayer, and we were able to relicense all of those, go through all the old paperwork. That it wasn't easy, but we brought all of that stuff to audiences where in a normal Glastonbury year, when we're trying to cover the festival, we just wouldn't have the time or the resource to do that. So it's made us look at things a little bit differently, realise what we've got, and we're able to use it better. So, I mean, there are some positives, but we need the events to happen. We need to support industry as we do. We work with Summer John's festivals. We work with Sybil on Independent Venue Week, because we need those things to happen so that we can record them and bring them to our audiences. But things like Introducing, for us, BBC Introducing, which is our uploader platform, I mean, that's thriving. I don't know if it's something like 900 uploads a week we got through lockdown, which is a lot more than we're usually getting. Maybe it's about 400 or 500 on a good week usually. So people are making music and getting it out there. But what we would usually do with that is we would filter them up from local radio up through to national radio, and then we would find them opportunities across the industry. That could be our Glastonbury stage, our Introducing stage, or it could be spots on different festivals. And we can't do that at the moment, and that's really frustrating for us, because we can see the talent and they're there, and we want to support them, but we can't necessarily support them with industry partnerships. I mean, we are able to bring in artists and record them in the BBC. That is happening again, thank God, because it didn't happen over the summer, But it's a much slower process, and there are fewer artists coming through, and we're just having to do things a bit differerly. So the Mercury Prize was one of mine. I mean, we were really desperate to celebrate those 12 albums this year, and we would normally have a big glitzy event at this Hammersmith Apollo, and everybody would have a few drinks and it'd all be lovely. Obviously that couldn't happen, and so we needed to showcase those artists. So we went to Bush Hall, which meant we could support venue, and we could record them all, a couple of days in between, take our time, record them beautifully, and make a different kind of TV show. And we had the winner announcement on the One Show, which was a bit of a shocker for some people. Like, what? It doesn't quite make sense. But it actually did make sense. And it meant that those 12 albums were showcased to 5 million viewers, which wouldn't normally happen. So we were pretty chuffed that we could make that work. And hopefully we've built a partnership now for next year. So there are some positives, and me and my colleagues are trying to find those wins, if you like, across the BBC. But we are just desperate for everything to get back up and running again, so we can partner with everyone, really. And
do you think it is, 2020 will be a blip, and people, you know, will basically 2021, everything will kind of resume again? Or do you think some things are going to be a little bit systemic and there'll be like a lot of lag on the impact on artists and people in that side of things?
It's really hard to tell. I know that we are committed to partnering with all of the events that we already partner with. So I don't know whether Glastonbury's going to go ahead. I hope it does. They're saying it will, and that's great. And if it does, we're there. And if it doesn't, we'll think of another way that we support on the BBC. And that's the same with all of our partnerships, you know, Reading and Leeds or any of the others. So we will always find a way to showcase the artists and to support the industry, whether the event's there or not. It's much easier when the event is there. So we've all got everything crossed for that. But it's really difficult to say, roll on the vaccine. That's all I say.
Yeah. So Billy's just teed up the perfect question after that, Rachel. So news of the vaccine obviously coming in, and so everyone's starting to think about next summer. John, for you, is there kind of a sense of optimism now, and you're starting to think, well, let's just assume the summer's happening, or is there still kind of a lot of trepidation? And I guess how are you planning differently now, knowing like, well, we've got all these extra risks to kind of take into account?
Yeah, there's risk there. It's not clear cut at the moment. I mean, certainly working back next year, Q4, I'd assume Q4 is going to be fine. So, you know, venue shows, you know, in the last quarter, I expect those to be business as usual. No distancing, and no particularly overt COVID control measures. Q1 completely out because that's vaccine rollout.
Yeah.
The middle bit. Yeah, I think the early part of the summer is going to be a challenge, to be honest. I think when you get to July and August, then we should be in reasonable shape. You know, no one's got the answer here.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to sit on a
lot better than to predict what's going to happen in a few months now, haven't we?
I'm in a working group with DCMS, with most of the key festival people in the UK, you know, looking at what the season looks like next year. And we're looking at what do you deliver where you've got no distancing, because we can't deliver shows with distancing, and we've been very clear about that from the get-go. But COVID is still in circulation. So,
yeah,
because it will be in some shape or form. You know, it's not going to disappear in Q2 or Q3, even if people are vaccinated.
And are you looking to like Australia and New Zealand to see how it's played out there? Because it's kind of like our question is like, is it going to be kind of binary and the taps are going to be turned on again once everyone's like, it's low enough now, masks off, no social distancing, and let's crack on? Or is it going to be like this kind of drip feed back to, like you say, when it's like, okay, now we're going to do 30, 40,000 person festival, no social distancing, mosh pits?
Yeah, I don't think you can look at the Southern Hemisphere at all, but you know, you can certainly take some inspiration from Europe. Personally, and I know a lot of my other colleagues and contemporaries have really been looking at football in the hope that we could take some guidance and take some of their experiences into play with us. Mainly because clearly they, you know, there's large capacity, they have an ingress phase, half-time circulation, ingress, massive issues around public transport. And it's been as frustrating for me as it has been for football clubs that they haven't brought any fans back as yet. But that is starting to happen. And the other thing with football, of course, is it's much more organised than it is compared to the music industry. You've got the Premier League, you've got the FA.
Yeah, their streaming services are slightly more well established as well.
Mm. But festivals will happen next summer. Whether they're going to happen in May or June, I don't know. You know, clearly it's in everyone's interest to get everyone back out in the field as quickly as possible, and certainly there's the appetite there when people put shows on sale. People want to go and buy. So there's no issue about people being scared from where I sit.
And your kind of assumption sounds like if festivals are happening in the summer, then you're going to plan for them to happen there or thereabouts, the same as they were happening 2019. No kind of huge differences other than, I guess, maybe in some contracts and things like that, insurance side.
Well, I mean, insurance is a whole issue.
Yeah, won't get too deep on that.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole just yet. But the things we're talking about with festivals are, it'll be 2 years for most people since they've been in the field in a high density, high occupancy, high crowd dense environment. It is going to make people anxious. People are going to be concerned. Whilst there's the appetite there to buy the tickets, I think actually arriving, getting out your car, queuing up to go in, and then being in front of the stage, there's going to be some apprehension when people get on site, and that needs to be borne in mind. So we're looking at how you can redesign sites to give a little bit more space, queuing with distancing in mind. So those bar, you normally get 1,000 people in a bar queue in 500 square meters. We might need to allow 2,000 square meters because everyone's going to be wanting to have a little bit more distance from people. I think people will expect a better level of sanitation, hand wash facilities, etc. So rural festivals with campsites where you've got taps and sinks where people are brushing the teeth 1 minute, washing the hands, washing pots. We're having a look at how we can improve on-site sanitation because I think it's going to be expected.
I think that's a good point. It's like, what kind of behaviours we've all kind of adapted over the last year are we going to unlearn or continue? And I guess that is thinking about venues. Like, Sybil, what do you think people's confidence is going to be like? Venues that people have forgot how to go to venues, and we're all kind of couch potatoes now. We're not just part of our life, or is there kind of an optimism like people are desperate to get back to live, and once things are open, there's going to be floodgates again? I think
everything there's a spectrum. Unsurprisingly, pretty much everybody I know can't wait to get back into a venue and see live music. I've been to 2 gigs during lockdown. One was at the 100 Club with the brilliant band Talk Show, and that was put on by the 100 Club to test how they could do socially distanced gigs. And we all sat at a table of, we were all sat at tables, not all at one, tables of 4, and drinks were brought to us. I mean, it's the most alien concept ever, right?
Sounds
hey?
Sounds very civilized.
Wait, I don't want civilized though. I want to bounce around at the front, look like an absolute idiot, and come out hot and sweaty and euphoric and just be like that. But I got to enjoy a brilliant night with an amazing band at a fantastic venue. And then later that week I went to Ronnie Scott's, where I was quite happy to sit down and see 2 pianists play Oscar Peterson all evening, and it was wonderful. And they were very different experiences. I think on the whole, people want to get back into venues. They want to do it when they know it can be safe. There are always going to be people who are super cautious, and again, we totally respect and understand that. For us, we've talked about it a lot here. I think next year will be the reverse. It'll be a mirror image of this year. So as John was saying, I think the first quarter will be, in and out of restrictions. I think as we move through the summer, it will ease and it will become more fluid. By the end of the year, we think and hope that we'll be where we were at the start of this year, where, it's not really considered very much. It'll still be on people's radar, but not in the same way. I think venues are desperate to reopen. Obviously, they're desperate to reopen, but again, only safely. No venue wants to be responsible for becoming a spreader event. No artists want to be playing somewhere that they don't feel is going to be safe and secure, and they don't want people coming to a show where they're performing and to leave ill. So there's a lot to consider there.
And how do you think, local communities, will venues be really looking for their local communities to go above and beyond to support them, and maybe even different models? One thing, we've been thinking about is will you become a member of your local venue? You giving them injection of cash, and then you get maybe a year's worth of access. Will there be different business models because venues are really strapped for cash and they really need to support the ecosystem? Or do you think generally it's going to go back to pretty much the same business models as well?
This membership idea is an interesting one, isn't it? And that's great if you're in a place where there's 5 or 6, venues on your doorstep where you've got choice. it might not work there. It might work where you've only got one venue locally, but also how does that work from a ticketing point of view? If you've got some premium shows, how do you allocate? How many tickets do you allocate? And if you're a member, if you've got 100 members, but you want to put tickets on sale, how many of those go to members? And if you're a member and you don't get them, how does that? You can often end up, not allowed to swear, upsetting more people than you need to. And there's the whole point of setting Independent Venue Week up was to get people off their screens and through the doors to enjoy a night of live music, because it's not just about the music, it's about arts and culture. When you walk through that door, you're seeing posters on the wall, somebody's designed those, what people are wearing sometimes matters. And I think it's so much more than just about the music. And I think I'm reserving judgment on the membership thing because I'm really not sure. But the principle is, if you go to gigs regularly, the venues will survive and thrive.
Yeah.
You know, the whole thing about campaigning to save venues, and I'm talking pre-COVID here, save venues. If people went more regularly because they were more compelled to go because the offering was good, we wouldn't end up. It's always a reactive thing. I think for us, it's always about being proactive. And I think people will look at different ways to do things, but we're going to have to think about it really carefully. And what we're hearing from people that we're speaking to, getting avails in venues for the end of next year is out. They're all booked. Everything's booked. There's 2 or 3 pencils on each date. So that just shows that people are, they're ready to get back performing live. Artists have been writing a lot. They want to get back performing live. The crew want to get back. The merch companies, the ticket companies, everybody wants to get back to business. And I think we might see some minor changes. But at the end of the day, the only part of the model that wasn't perhaps working quite so well is people were not going to gigs in the way that they would. That makes the circuit thrive, really. And if people can get off their screens and go to gigs more, then we should be where we need to be.
I guess the hope is that people kind of realise a bit more what they've been missing out, and it's kind of become a little bit, clearer. I definitely feel like that.
It's one hell of a lesson, though, isn't it? We didn't need it to go on for this long for us to understand that.
3 weeks would have been fine.
I've been coming into the office. I walk into the office because I live on my own at home. I don't want to spend all that time not engaging and just sitting in a box. And I think the mental health and well-being of this whole country has taken a real battering. And for some people, being at home has been a godsend. They've appreciated it. But for so many people, they do really recognise and understand that socialising and interaction is human nature, and that's what we really need. Yeah. And from TicketTailor, we kept an eye, especially over the summer, where there was kind of this window where some events were happening, and the demand there did seem like quite instant. Like, I do think, there's always going to be 10%, maybe whatever it is, of the population are nervous for whatever personal reasons. But the live events that we saw come online just absolutely flew. Well, that's the thing. And I think, we've been speaking, obviously we're going ahead with Independent Venue Week this year. Can you imagine if we turned around and said we weren't doing it? That would be a real snub. And of course, generally what happens with Independent Venue Week, people want their shows to go on sale as soon as possible. We normally do our announcement of how many venues and everything at the end of November, and we will be announcing next week. And people are desperate to get their shows on sale because they want a long lead-in time for ticket sales. We're not going to know till the middle of January whether or not we're going to be able to do any socially distant shows. And we've said to everybody, do you know what? If you find out a week before and you can put tickets on sale then, they will sell out. They will sell out like that. So,
people's diaries aren't that booked up at the moment, are they?
Yeah.
That's true. And so, Trevor, from your point of view, when you look at 2021, like, how does live streaming fit into that picture? Do you think it would be something people are just a lot more comfortable with now and will be this kind of hybrid model at venues? Do you think people will be more comfortable doing kind of one-off stuff, more high value? Like, where do you kind of see that side of things that's obviously done really well this year looking like next year?
Yeah, well, on the points of venues and stuff like that, live streaming going forward next year, I think it would definitely be a hybrid where there'll be some live streaming, some live events, social distance and stuff as we ease back into it. I think we can all agree that us lot will go out and see bands a lot. We want venues open, we want to go, and when they're open, I'm definitely going straight away. I'm there. What is interesting with this, we're on a hiatus. Hopefully we're on a hiatus of, nostalgia. This has been really big through this stage, nostalgia for old merch, old TV, old music, all this stuff. So hopefully this will boost the venues back. I know, speaking to people before this, venues were having a downturn, pubs were having a downturn. This stuff was coming anyway. Why was this stuff coming anyway? We're not quite sure. But what I am sure of is, platforms like Xbox are live streaming gigs to kids at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I've been on with my kids playing Fortnite through the lockdown. That's one of the bonuses that I get to play with kids in Fortnite. And they've been watching stuff like Stevie Aoki DJing, Dominic Fike doing a live gig. So these things are coming in for young people. And we're talking about screens. We need to get people off screens and back into venues. So hopefully, the hybrid thing coming in will promote venues more. I think venues were, a couple of years back, we've been talking to venues about live streaming stuff, trying to promote this before the lockdown for the last 5 years, really trying to push it in. Some people are getting on it. And what we see from live streaming and creating content online really taps into people who've not been to a venue for a long time. And it gives them the ideal to go to see it. So hopefully people using live streaming and engaging with it will actually support venues to go and see the live experience.
John mentioned kind of football earlier, and it's a little bit
football's
it doesn't put you off going to a live football match because some Saturdays you watch it on the TV.
Definitely. And what the big thing, what I'm saying to people, it's got to be live. Live is live. Live's not live, pre-recorded, played out live. Live is live, so you need interaction, you need comments, you need competitions, you need giveaways, you need to make it like a show for people to interact with.
Yeah.
So I hate watching football matches back as recorded when they're not live. Even watching gigs back, you watch a gig, like I watched Queen at Barcelona, a big famous gig, and I've got it on DVD still. But you can only watch it so many times when it's not live. You don't get that feeling of what it's like to be actually watching something that's actually happening in real time. Another thing I think for events with live streaming is what we've looked at, and for artists, is there is crowdfunding platforms out there now. For the meantime, there's crowdfunding platforms that people can put extra content online that they record or do as live and use for social, and that will help push people forward to come to your venues or monetize or support, like donating for something. You can watch a little bit of content. There's platforms like Patreon, what a lot of people are using, what are great to put extra content on, where you do get a monthly subscription so people can build up a monthly income, and venues can do it as well. So there is stuff like that, but we definitely want to get back to gigs. But what is interesting is, like the online scene with gaming and kids. I'm not sure if my kids, and they are like 12 and 13 now, are gonna want to go out to gigs. So this is a chance for us to promote this and look at the next 5 years. And I think I agree that we work with so many freelancers in the industry. People, we've seen companies go down through this, and I think government need to look at ways of supporting the arts. The arts in Britain are massive, and ways of innovative ways of supporting them, and have a 3-year, 5-year plan for COVID and for the digital revolution, because we're in the middle of it.
Yeah. And so thanks for that, Trevor. Rachel, do you kind of like have any predictions for like systemic changes in the industry? Like you saw Guy Garvey at the select committee, like basically saying how it kind of highlights the inadequacies of streaming services. Like, how do you see that playing out over the next few years?
Oh, well, listen, it's not my world, the streaming world. We've just done a Children in Need single, actually, with Radio 2, with Cher and Robbie and the likes, covering Oasis. And, just knowing the difference between a download and a stream was kind of eye-watering. So we would try and encourage everybody to download. And I'll be honest with you, that's a new world for me. We are a step away from the money. We're in the business of supporting artists. So in terms of change for the future, I'm worried. I'm worried for artists, because when I'm booking for the likes of Later or even the Live Lounge or some of our live platforms, we need to know those artists are, yeah, there might be a bit of hype around, but they need to have honed their craft, and they need to have a live show, and it needs to have probably gone a bit wrong here and there before they get it right. You know, bands like Idols, yeah, that record's amazing, but you've got to see that show. And they will have played, well, God knows how many gigs, Sybil will probably know, hundreds and hundreds of gigs to get to that sort of level before we can then invite them on to these different platforms. So that stream's not going to come through. You know, there are artists doing well, but it's not the natural order of things if they haven't dragged the kit around to hundreds of venues over the last year or so. So I'm worried about that. The sooner we get them out there playing, the better.
Yeah, makes sense. We had a question here I've seen that's pitting music against football a little bit more, and I wondered if you had an opinion on this, John, about you know, is there like animosity in the industry that kind of football's going to, or professional sport looks like it's coming back quicker than music, or is that kind of understood in the industry?
I think that's understood. You know, clearly there's a big difference between indoors and outdoors in terms of, you know, the viral transmission. So, you know, outdoors and fans pointing one way, I think we can just learn from football. And there is opportunity in the new tiering to allow for shows to return, you know, in a distanced manner. And there's a number of theatre pantomime productions out there on sale at the moment. You know, theatres pushing forward. You know, they've had to support from the Arts Council and the National Lottery in order to do that. So, you know, things are starting to happen. But I mean, looking forward to the next year, George, I think it isn't as easy turning the light on and everything will come back. You know, even when we can come back. And one of the areas of great concern is the whole supply chain for our industry. I think it's going to take at least another year, if not, you know, two, until we're back to where we were.
Is that because of businesses like going out of business and they're just not there, so people need to plug the gap, or is it kind of just the break in time has kind of?
Yeah, I mean, there's been very little support for a lot of the supply industries within the event, hospitality, music sector. So, and a lot of these companies have not been able to pivot. So, you know, whilst right now you can't hire a porter cabin for love of the money. So porter cabin companies are all right, they're all at test centres. The marquee companies have pivoted because they're at test centres too. But lighting rental companies, PA rental companies, you know, they have not had a jot of work for a long time now. And while some have had some funding, you know, a lot are struggling, a lot have made mass redundancies. You know, these are highly skilled personnel, riggers, lighting technicians, sound engineers, and you know, while some, you know, will come back to the industry, it's going to take a considerable while to get back to where we were.
So that's a concern for you guys as you start planning shows, is kind of how you're going to plug those gaps.
Absolutely, because as Sybil says, everyone wants to do a show in Q4 next year. So not only, you know, and understandably so, you know, the talent want to earn money. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of bands touring. They're going to need PA, they're going to need lights, they're going to need staging, they're going to need a load of technicians. And is there enough to go around? You know, we shall see. There's a lot of festivals rescheduling to queue, you know, later in the summer. So I think we're going to get an equipment shortage, personnel shortage there as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, George, I'm just jumping in here. 5 minutes left, so I was just going to quickly run through some of the questions. I know you just picked up on them already. Just a quick question for Trevor, but I guess it'd be good to get everyone's opinion on this. Where do you think augmented reality and AI tech fits into the future of live music? How is that going to sit alongside the live streaming? I mean, it'd be good to get everybody's opinion on that, I think.
Okay, well, AI's here with music already. I mean, it tracks you, watches what you stream. You know, it's watching you all the time, really, on all of them. Let's not mention all the platforms, but on the platforms that it's basically tracking you. AI's here, it's happening. That's cool. Not a lot we can do about it. We all sign up to it. We tick the box. Augmented reality is really interesting. Augmented reality came in a couple of years ago and it kind of went out again. So augmented reality is like when you put your iPad up and interact and something appears to be virtually in a scene or in a piece of reality. I think that's still very marketing marketing side of things, you know, where bands could use it. I think I've seen Radiohead use it once, or the White Stripes, or some of that use some of this stuff. But I think for bands, what is really cool, what might push is not so much augmented reality, but 3D immersive spaces, you know, where you put the headset on and you're actually in, you know, the actually in the environment. I think that could be quite big. We've done a couple of things with bands on that. But augmented reality is more of putting things into an environment, but the headset and being actually in a crowd is really interesting. That Fortnite does that. You know, you can actually be in and standing next to your friend, and you're a little character. You can speak to them, and that's there already as well. That's very, very cool. So, you know, it's still cool with some of the tech, but like I've been saying to people before with the live streaming stuff, it's like it's like happens to technology in a war. You know, it gets really pushed loads of money into it, and it accelerates at a rapid rate of knots, and it's accelerating really fast now. So you've got to see where it goes. But yeah, augmented reality would have a place. Augmented reality is really good actually for posters for gigs. What I've been saying to people, and QR codes are back in for getting people to your YouTube channel, to content. I keep saying to people, if you're going to put a flyer out, why are you not putting a QR code on it? So that's something to think about, I suppose.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute, Susan. That's that old mute thing.
Sorry, that was me. Thanks for that. What do you all think about the idea of creating a tax fund to support live music raised from tax and music streaming platforms, topical, that have seen profits go up recently? So I guess that's maybe Rachel or Sybil, John, George, anybody?
What was the question, Susan?
What do you all think about the idea of creating a tax fund to support live music raised by tax and music streaming platforms that have made a profit, or organisations that are making a profit basically?
We've got the VAT break at the moment, which, you know, is clearly very useful. It's good to see that the period of that to be extended. Whether taxing music streaming directly to support live, I'm not too sure about that.
I guess the fear would be.
It's not my area. I have, you know, I know it's extremely topical right now, but yeah, it's. I think it will be hotly debated over the coming weeks. So, but yeah,
I think that people would. I think the more appropriate route would be for streaming. You know, any revenue from streaming would go into the recorded and the art as well, perhaps, and it would be ticketing on bigger events, any kind of a taxation on ticketing bigger events, stadiums and arenas, going back to the sort of the grassroots community. I think it would be live versus recorded, and I think that would be where it would be more appropriate to see music funneling back down from the bigger organisations.
For sure. I think we just got time for one more, I guess.
There was a nice question about what gigs, where we want to go and see a gig.
Yeah, go with that.
Ooh, I do want to go and see a gig. I want to go to a really small, sweaty venue, and I don't even mind queuing at the bar, but it's got to have a big old bar that serves pints. Not those 2 pinters, that's too weird. So somewhere like the Castle or Gulliver's in Manchester, please, for me. Anyone else?
I want to pretty much anywhere, to be fair. If I I can't wait to get back to the 100 Club and be in the corner with Jeff and Ruby and our crew and the guys from Fred Perry, and, you know, just having a great night there. I can't wait to get back to Hebden Bridge. Can't wait to get back to the Adelphi in Hull. Pretty much anywhere, you know, anywhere.
Yeah, I think I'd like to travel and go to a gig, you know. So I think I want to go back down to Brighton and go to a couple of gigs down there. Oh God, I can't even remember the venue down at the front now. What's it called? What's it called? Big Beat Petite, Big Beat Petite 2 and whatever. So I'd love to go somewhere like that, travel, you know, get out and travel for a bit and see some friends you've not seen for a while as well.
I'd probably say the local park where I live usually has a nice big festival in the summer, and it was completely locked down, and the park was completely empty. So going back into the park, huge festival, lots of friends. I'm looking for.
Go on, John.
Well, here in England, we're all anxiously waiting for the Health Secretary to tell us what tier we're going to end up in. So, I'm hoping I can get Escape to Great Island open before Christmas, because we can do distanced live music here really safely. So I'd like to get my venue open this side of Christmas.
I'll be there.
Yeah, send us an invite. I'll go.
You're all very welcome.
Do another panel before that. I really get
That was a really lovely way to sort of conclude this session. We are at 11 o'clock, so I'd just like to say thanks everybody for leading this session. Thanks everybody for getting involved. There's lots of great chat happening at the sides. Do feel free to contact the people asking questions directly and hang about for the rest of the day, hopefully. Up next on this area, we have More Than Music in 15 minutes, but for the time being, to click the leave button at the top of your screen, and we'll catch you soon. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers, George. Bye.